you can start to travel free and save that line item in your budget, but also you get to travel more because it's free or next to free. So you're saving money plus traveling more. That double combo there, that's available to anyone. You don't have to go out and sign up for dozens of credit cards a year. Again, you can take a fully free trip, family of four, for one or two credit cards total.
Derrick Dye, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here, man. It's great to see you.
Since you sent out the invitation, I've been looking forward to it. Love the podcast, love following along, and it's good to catch up with you on air.
Nice. I appreciate it. Well, for everyone listening, Derrick, you are the co-founder of travelonpoints.com. And I looked earlier today. I know there's a really large Facebook group. I think there's over 30,000 members at this point. Is that right?
Yeah, with a little bit of luck, we'll hit 37,000 next week. So we grow about 100 people a day.
No kidding. All right. Well, hopefully for everyone listening, they go to check it out either before or after. Well, let me ask you, I'm excited to get into all kinds of stuff with you. You lived a fascinating life. And for anyone listening that doesn't know this, my wife happens to be very interested in this space of travel hacking and points and miles. And we do a lot of this on our own as well, which is how you both met, I think, at some point along the way. But yeah, I'm excited to get into travel, to the business and blog, and to how this all came to pass. I guess maybe to start, what is the most amazing trip you've taken in the last, several years, 3-5 years, whatever comes to mind?
It was actually our last trip before COVID and the pandemic hit us. We didn't know at the time what was, obviously no one knew what was happening, but late October 2019, my wife and I were celebrating, I guess, anniversary number 7. We flew to Japan on ANA, All Nippon Airways, in first class, direct from Washington, D.C. We went with friends. They got to fly business class on the same flights with us. Just a world-class experience in first class, staying in super nice hotels, eating all the sushi, eating all the ramen, 10 days in paradise. If you haven't been to Japan, you have to go. It was a perfect trip. And, segueing less than 3 months ahead, the world shutting down, it was a perfect end or pause to our international travel. It was an absolutely magical and perfect trip.
Oh, amazing. I think that Japan just opened back up, didn't they?
They did.
After all this time, it's, you may know this already, but we had a family trip booked to Japan right before the pandemic, and we were hanging on for hope right at the end there. And then finally it just, the walls were closing in and they were shutting things down. And so we bailed at the last minute, but that trip is one that I've wanted to do for so long. And the fact that you got to do it in style, all the better.
It was wonderful. I mean, Japan would be great if you had to row a boat over there and get seasick the whole time. Japan is magical. The people are lovely. The country is lovely. Food is obviously wonderful, but doing it in luxury certainly helped.
So how many countries have you been to at this point? Do you know offhand?
As of the time of this recording, 29. By the time this is probably released, hopefully 32. We have a trip next week picking up 3 more.
Where are you headed?
We are flying into Vienna, so picking up Austria, going to Bratislava, and then over to Budapest. So we'll pick up Hungary as well. So nice little trio of countries.
Beautiful. And how many trips do you guys take each year?
Pre-COVID, as we were really ramping up our points and miles game, we tried to maximize our vacation 5 or 6 weeks a year. So, typically 4 or 5 big trips and then a lot of weekend trips domestically. We tried to do a nice mix of domestic and international, but typically 4 to 5 weeks a year of international travel.
Amazing. Well, when our kids get a little older, I'm excited to continue to do more of it. So I'm curious as to how this all came to pass. So nowadays, obviously you're a very avid traveler and you're very engaged in making that travel wonderful and in many cases free, which we'll talk more about. But where did this all start? Like when you were younger, did you travel? What was your experience as growing up?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think you really, everyone's complex. I might be more complex than most because I'm kind of strange on a few things. But, going all the way back, I think my childhood really shaped where I am now in almost all facets of my life. Lower middle class family. Dad was a blue collar worker he was a maintenance supervisor in a factory. My mom was a stay home mom most of the time while pursuing higher education. She finished with a master's degree in counseling before dying when I was in middle school.
Mm.
But we traveled as much as we could. My dad loved traveling, but again, it was a one income household, so
Mhm.
we traveled 2 weeks a year, road trips only. Never flew until college. And we just went around the United States, road trips, staying in the cheapest hotels, going to the cheapest restaurants, living out of a cooler for breakfast and lunch. We weren't, you can't say we were poor because we were traveling 2 weeks a year, but we were poor. So we were, again, we were living out of coolers, two meals a day, and then going to a cheap restaurant for dinner most of the time. But I got to see the entire lower 48 states 3 times each or more before my mom died when I was 14. So we did a lot of traveling, a lot of 5, 6, 7,000 mile road trips all over the country. My dad absolutely loved it. So that gave me a love of travel, but it also really, kind of shaped me as uh, um, parsimonious, cheap.
Yeah.
you know, uh,
Frugal,
you can,
frugal.
yeah, exactly. You can choose your adjective. So, as I went to college, pay my way through college, pay my way through law school for the day job as an attorney. I've always been frugal and never been a couponer or clipping coupons, that type of thing. But what we now do is sort of similar. So I always enjoyed travel. I really couldn't afford it. But I tried to do domestic travel as much as I could throughout my college years. I did road trips everywhere. I traveled as I could when not working to pay for college. I met my wife in 2010, and we started doing road trips as well domestically. After getting married 2012, we started, we were advancing our careers a little bit. We decided to go for an international trip, and I'm a history major in college. I'm a history buff. I absolutely love it. She was kind enough to let me pick the first trip. She'd traveled some internationally in high school and college herself. So it was not her first international trip, just mine. So she let me pick. I chose Athens,
Mm.
Greece, and
Great choice.
Istanbul. Constantinople being in my mind, it's the center of the world from a
Mhm.
historical standpoint. So we went about 9 or 10 days. This was pre-points. This was all on cash. I found a really good fare, maybe $500 each. Again, we stayed in cheap hotels, did bare bones travel all on our own, no tours or anything. I fell in love, as
Mm.
most people do.
Mhm.
It was a wonderful experience. Loved the people we met. Had wonderful times. Got to go to an international soccer match in Turkey. It was just mind-blowingly awesome. Came back and I was fully addicted. So I said, Sarah, we have to figure out a way to do this more. So I think that last year, the rest of that year, that was a February trip. We scheduled 2 more international trips that year. And then that was 2014. It's been downhill ever since. We travel again. We're up to 4 or 5 international vacations. I'd be a full-time digital nomad if it were possible, maybe spending my summers in Maryland. I love traveling domestically and internationally. I love meeting new people, experiencing new things, new cultures. It's truly addictive.
So you just kind of touched on it there. I thank you for sharing that. And it's, yeah, I think it's a story that people will definitely relate to. I I had a very similar experience. I didn't travel out of the country until I was in college. It was the first time, and I went to London. And when Erin and I, my wife and I met, for whatever reason, we both just had these aspirations somewhere inside of us that we wanted to go further. And so we started to take some really big trips together. And immediately, I felt like I learned more in a very short period of time, traveling to other countries, to other cultures, than I had in almost my whole life in a pretty short period of time. And so these days, like for us, it has turned into such a passion for we want, I want our kids to learn about the world that way, and in a way that I couldn't. For you, what is it about travel that you think really enriches your life most?
Yeah. You know, that's a great philosophical question, and I've thought about it a lot. And, not to make too big of, this thing we love, this hobby we love called travel, but I truly do think it is life changing. And, we're most of us realize that we're very fortunate to live in the United States. And I think especially international travel, it highlights how blessed we are in the United States and how lucky we are to be here and living here. But also, it really shows us, or shines a spotlight on, how similar we all are. It doesn't matter where we live, what language we speak, our cultures, what have you. The old cliche: we all bleed red. You will find someone, if you open up your mind and your heart. You will find someone in any culture that you can relate to, and it's kind of mind blowing. It really makes you want to go do more, go see more, meet people. The place you've heard of that's so dangerous, it's probably not more dangerous than your nearest major city in the United States. There, even if there are, quote unquote bad people there, there's bad people everywhere. There's a lot more good than bad.
Man, I really love that. It's so true. It's like you meet people and you realize that there are just core elements of human beings, of humanity, that are the same. Like, do people over there love their parents and love their families and, want to live good lives and, trying to pursue things that are pleasant and fun and contribute? Yes, 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 yes.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but also for me, it's reminded me, like, I'm sitting in Hunt Valley, Maryland right now, and the world is so much bigger than
It really is.
the
Yeah,
trials and tribulations of Hunt Valley, Maryland in my life here.
it really is. And, on some levels, I feel like airplane travel makes that even greater, but it also minimizes it. Sometimes we hop on an airplane and we think, man, I'm going 12 or 14 hours away. The world is so large. And then we get there and we love it, but we also immediately forget how much of the earth did we pass over in that 12 to 14 hours. It's probably also all the same as where I'm from and where I am, that I also love. All of that's probably worth seeing as well.
Mm, that's so great, man. Yes.
We're getting really deep here today, aren't we?
You're making me, I'm just really excited. Actually, you said Istanbul, and that's a trip that I think we're planning to take pretty soon. And I don't know what your dates are for Europe, but we're going to Austria and Germany to go to the Christmas markets with the kids in November.
Perfect. Yeah, we're going late October, and I really can't wait. Our last big international trip was in May and June, and I'm to the point now. 3, 4, 5 months is too long between international. Just such a change of pace and culture. When you have high stress, um, you know, busy work environments, it's nice to take a step back and just go and have an espresso and read the paper and see what the locals are doing. Take a
Yes.
step back and just enjoy the morning.
Do you have the experience of, I've had this experience. I'm just curious if you have too. When I leave, it's beautiful. Sometimes I don't want to come home when I'm there, but usually when I come home, it's good to be like, I have this sense of like, I appreciate home more. Like, it's good to walk through my door and it just feels warmer and better than it did when I was just kind of cooped up and doing this same old for weeks on end. Have you ever had that? Do you have that
Yeah,
experience?
I agree. I think that, for most people, I would think that's probably the case. I feel like regardless of how long my trip is, if it's a 4 or 5 day long weekend, or if it's a 2 week, blowout special trip, by the end of it, I've planned for my time. I've kind of conserved my batteries for that amount of time. By the end of it, the batteries are drained. And when your batteries are drained, sometimes you just want to get home, lock that front door, and take off the facade, not speak to anyone, and just kind of veg for a few days and start recharging.
Totally. Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you got into this, because it's true that travel can bring so many things. I couldn't agree more. But it's true that for a lot of people, budget's an issue or time's an issue. And you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a full-time lawyer. You're a trial lawyer, as I understand it.
That's
Um,
correct.
so how did you, as a trial lawyer, whatever you want to say about your career choice or your passions there, but how did you ultimately, being a full-time lawyer with busy careers, like you said, you and your wife, how did you end up working your way into this travel game?
Yeah. So that again, that's a great question, and I need to go back, I guess, to the beginning and lay a little foundation. So
Please.
my wife, also attorney, um, also busy, sometimes much busier than I am. She found this gig, and it was when we were selling a house in Baltimore City, moving out to the suburbs, as most people do after marriage, and wanting a bigger space and to leave the nightlife atmosphere of the city. She started looking at, we're spending all this money to do the move and to furnish a house and this and that. We have to get some kind of return on it. We're around 30 something professionals, early to mid 30 professionals. We have a decent job. We don't have a ton of debt other than student loans and cars and things like that. We have to get some return on this. And she did a deep dive over some time, said there has to be something better than just cash back credit cards. And she discovered a couple of writers. One is a mutual friend of your wife, Erin, and my wife Sarah and I. A former writer at TPG had his own Facebook group, like Travel on Points,
That's the
and
points
she.
guy for anyone listening.
Oh yeah, sorry, the Points guy. Yes, one of the most famous in our space. He was a writer for the Points guy. Had his own Facebook group, like Travel on Points, and Sarah did a deep dive in that. Got really interested, and I was, as we call it, the skeptical player too. I thought she was going to ruin our credit with this credit card game. I envisioned a life of debt, going to debtor prison if that actually exists, and our lives being ruined. We'll never retire. Probably going to file
The
bankruptcy,
lawyer's
what have you.
mind at work
Yeah.
there.
And as a litigator, my mind goes a mile a minute, and I'm always thinking 10 steps ahead, playing
Right.
chess to most people's checkers.
Right.
So she said, just trust me. I trust her implicitly. She got a card and then another card, and I just kind of played it, slow played it, tried to see what would happen. Her credit score was fine. I thought, okay, let's do it. So I took a deep dive. I am not one to put my toes in the water. If I'm going to get in the water, I go head first and go to the deep end. So I took a deep dive. Long story short, that was 2015. By 2017, we were earning millions of points a year. We were opening dozens of credit cards each per year, and obviously that really, really changed our travel. We went from budget travelers that, I was searching out the cheapest airfare to a place we wanted to go. It could have 2 or 3 layovers in economy, middle seats, whatever's the cheapest way to get anywhere. It
Yeah.
really changed our life. We started upping our hotel game since it was free. We were staying at more luxury hotels. We were looking for nicer cabins to fly. We ended up going to Australia in 2018,
Mm.
and we found a word space, which is hard to do on a flight to Australia for those of you that haven't looked. But United happened to launch a new flight from Houston. And the day they announced it, there happened to be wide open award space over Memorial Day. So as anyone would do, I booked a seat out there and back, and then told Sarah, "Hey, do we have the time off to go to Australia at Memorial Day?" And she sort of laughed and said, "Let's do it." I told her it was in business class. That was our first business class experience. That was sort of the light bulb opening, really, in our minds. When you walk on that plane and go to business class for the first time, especially on a long flight to Australia, 18 hours over and maybe 17 and a half back, you know, four, five, $6,000 each, and you get on that plane for $11.20 round trip. It's life changing. And as again, I'm prone to just going straight to the deep end. Once I really love something, I'm not quiet about it, and I run my big mouth. So I was talking to all of our friends, all of our coworkers, and it reached a point where I was telling the same stories every day. I had judges stop me in courtrooms, wanting to know, how am I? I saw your continuance request for this and that. How are you traveling so much? How are you doing it? I had a judge ask me on the record in court if I was a trust fund baby. People just
Oh my
assume
gosh.
you're traveling and you're doing all these experiences, you're rich. Well, that's not the case. We found another way, and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other people have found a way. You can have these sort of out of world experiences, mind-blowing experiences that would cost you tens and thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're for pennies and points. So that led us to start the group. I would like to say it was for an incredible business plan and, well thought out. And it was really what we wanted to do. And we researched it and knew the market and we were ready to go. No, we were simply sick and tired of having the same conversations with the same people over and over and over again, literally on a daily basis. Just, this is how you do it. This is where you should start. So I had the bright idea one day, Sarah, let's start a blog. We'll put it all in writing, and we'll just send people to this one website, one web page with basically a beginner guide. No ideas on making money, no ideas on growing the business, none of that. I said, well, maybe we should also have a Facebook group to accompany the blog, so that if they have questions about that one little page of info, they can come ask questions. 3 years later, 37,000 people later, 1,000 plus blog posts, and it growing every day, both the blog and the Facebook group. Here we are. So not much of a business plan back then, full-blown business today.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. Well, I want to, you said so much that was really interesting there. I want to, as we go here, talk about some of the misconceptions, but let's paint the picture of what's the promise here. You touched on it a little bit, but at this point in the game, and I know a lot of people, my wife, of course, the same. What is really the promise? Like, are you traveling these days for the most part in pretty high style? Do you have status at hotels? Like, what's your general experience like these days?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Sarah and I are obviously now 8 years into accumulating points. We lead a group. It's basically our full-time job, even though we have other full-time jobs, but we dedicate a lot of time and energy to learning this, to making everything we can as good as possible, and really redeeming our points as best we can. But as we sit here today, perfect example, next week's trip, business class over to Vienna from Dulles. That was about $200 total in taxes plus some points. We're staying at an Intercontinental with top tier IHG status. We're staying in the presidential suite at the Park Hyatt Vienna for 4 nights with top tier Hyatt status. We then transfer to Bratislava, staying at a DoubleTree. Not sure what happened there, but we are in a suite, is what I've heard. I don't know what a suite at a DoubleTree is going to look like. There weren't a lot of American hotels there. It's a quick 1 night stay. We wanted to, just figure out what we could do. We're then going out to wine country, the sweet dessert wine area. We're staying at a castle winery out there. That's all on points, going to be free. Then we're coming back to Budapest, 5-star luxury hotel, completely free. And then flying home on KLM, business class. That was again about $250 or $300 total. So we've got a 10-day trip, business class over and back, 5-star hotels every night except for the one in Bratislava at the DoubleTree. All in, we are under $700 for a 10-day trip.
$700.
It's hard to say with a straight face, but it's all true.
So that's wonderful. I'm very, very happy for you guys, and I can't wait to hear about it. I laugh because I do pinch myself when my wife gets us into some similar trips at times. Now, are you? How much would you? Do you have any guess as to how much that might cost were you to pay cash?
This trip is like $27,000.
$27,000. So, I think sometimes when people hear people like us, or people that like to travel or have learned to love to travel, travel a lot. They think of the airport lines and all the bad parts of travel, right? All the frustrating parts. But it is worth noting that if you are able to improve the quality of the experience, if you're going to nicer hotels, if you have some status at the hotel, if you're able to fly business class, I mean, what would you say? How different is that experience from anyone listening who might have the image of just kind of a more standard travel experience?
Yeah. It's night and day, right? I mean, it's night and day, and it's hard to describe how different it is if you haven't experienced it. If you're flying business class, you're most likely going to have lounge access at the airport. You're going to have priority check-in. If you check bags, they're going to be free. You're going to have a dedicated line. It'll probably be a few minutes. Regardless of when you come to check in to drop off your bags and to get through security. You're then going to be able to board the plane first. You're going to have a massive space on the plane. You're probably going to get greeted by name, have a drink, alcohol or non-alcoholic, water, juice, whatever you want. You're going to get a nice hot towel to wash off your travels in the airport. That's all before departure, right? On arrival, you're going to be the first off the plane, go straight typically to a business or first class customs immigration area. We did an international flight a few weeks ago to Mexico and Nicaragua. Both times I was through security, being first off the plane in less than 2 minutes.
Wow.
All of us that have flown international economy, you get the back of the bus. You could be there an hour or two. I think in Morocco we were there for about 3 hours to get through it. Doesn't happen in business class. And again, we saw the luggage issues in Europe this summer, just an absolute disaster. That doesn't happen with business class and first class because there's no line for check-in. You're not going to worry about missing your plane because it's a 3-hour line to check your bags. You've got no one in front of you in this dedicated line for the 30 people flying business class. So it's night and day. And the same with hotels. You get upgrades. You typically, most chains, you get free breakfast. You get personalized service. Anything you want is a phone call or a chat in the app away, and they'll make it happen for their top tier elites. And all of these perks essentially can be had through credit cards.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And yeah, for anyone listening who's not had this experience, it's true. I mean, it really is like living like a multi-millionaire on, for pennies on the dollar. So, all right. So you got into travel on points, as you described. What is it that you felt? I mean, there's the points guy is probably the one that most people would have heard of, but there's plenty of people in the space. What was it that you felt like you wanted to bring to the space that was different from what was already there, or that you wanted to try to provide a unique perspective on?
Two things, I think, actually three. There's a female presence missing in our game, as you well know, with Aaron being a writer in the space and being active in this space. It's definitely missing a female presence. I don't know the breakdown, but the overwhelming majority of points and miles bloggers and Facebook groups and things are led by guys. I know I'm here. Unfortunately, on the face of this podcast saying, hey, we need more women. And I'm not a female, but that's why my wife and I started it. Our team is majority female. We wanted a female presence to be louder than it is at most other places. We want a friendly space. And we, as you grow, 37,000 people on the internet, there are a few spaces where that is a friendly place. Travel on Points is a friendly place. You won't be judged. You won't be ridiculed. You won't be mocked. If you ask a question, you'll get efficient, friendly advice, typically from a female. That's unheard of in our space, which is great. I guess the last thing I really wanted to see was, this isn't a one size fits all thing. There's such an emphasis on redeeming your points for max value, and I'm a poster child for that. I love redeeming my points for maximum value, but my maximum value and your maximum value may be completely different, right? You and Aaron travel with kids. Sarah and I don't. For you all, it might be redeeming for this flight on a school schedule to go visit family somewhere or to go, Christmas market. Well, that's a specific date. Sarah and I have more flexibility without kids and without a school schedule. So my best redemption and your best redemption may be completely different. You don't think mine is the best redemption. I don't think yours is the best redemption. Neither of us are wrong, right? Maybe neither of us are right. But so much of the space gets so, I don't know the right term, like congested, focused. We have to all go in this narrow gate. And if you don't fit in these parameters, you're trash. You're dead to me. That's ridiculous. Not only is it unfriendly, not only is it off-putting and make people just retreat back in their corner, but it's wrong. It's wrong. Everyone's different. Everyone's priorities are different, and we can all use our points how we want to. So we wanted to, be friendly, be female focused, and really show people the world is their oyster, but also the world they want may be different than the world I want, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. So let's give people a lay of the land here. How do you think about how should people think about points and miles in terms of valuing it?
Yeah. So that's a good question. That this is where we sort of, people get really narrow-minded, and I can be one of them, unfortunately. But I treat points and miles as a currency. I receive X amount of points on certain credit cards for $1 worth of spend. Well, you can get a cash back card, right? So 2% cash back card, every dollar you spend, you get 2% of that cash back, 2 cents back. Or you can replace that cash back for points. That's the way I treat it. So my points have to be worth more than what the cash back would be, or it's a losing proposition. So I, over time, have generated my own points and miles valuation. And I have basically a tabulation chart, and I know what I value them at. And when the redemption is better than a cash back redemption of some sort, and it almost always is, but if it is, I can do it. If it's not, you skip on, maybe pay cash, maybe look elsewhere for a different redemption, or so on and so forth. But I think for most of us in the space, on some level, it's another currency. We earn US dollars, hopefully from our job or our side hustle. And then we earn this other currency, points and miles, from our spending.
So, okay. So that's wonderful and very helpful. And so when you say valuation, what you're referring to is, what there are different ways that you can get, certain number of points per cent, or a certain number of, is it points percent? And depending on where you book the flight and which, partner you use, which portal you use, which type of point it is, there's all sorts of different valuations. And so you can get a better or worse value for the points. Is that right?
That's right. It's basically a two-part process. It is, what can you earn for your spend? Hotel points, airline points, or what we call transferable points that can go to, these big banks, Chase, Amex, Citi. The new one is Bilt, BILT. These banks that have their own points that can go to various partners. Capital One is another. So the first part is, what can you earn from your spend? That's part one. Part two is, once you have those points, what can you trade them for, right? We know what $1 gets us at the gas pump. There's a price, right? $4 a gallon, $1 is going to get you a quarter gallon unless the pump is broken. Then we have another problem. There's really no set, it's really hard to find uniform prices for things if you don't know what you're looking for. So the second piece of points and miles is, what can I use the points I've earned to cash in to get something for quote unquote free?
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the value there? Okay. So that's really helpful. So what are the biggest misconceptions? Because earlier you said, in passing, we started to get pretty quickly, we got to a point where we're getting dozens of credit cards. And I think when people hear that, they say like, oh my gosh, how is that even possible? How does it not wreck your credit? What are the biggest misconceptions people have about this whole process, and what's true about it and not?
Yeah. We kind of live in this time where we're sort of stuck in the post-depression era lives of our parents and grandparents. Back for the survivors of the depression and the the stock market crash, they were, let's live debt free, let's hoard cash, let's not invest in the market. People, for 60, 70 years now have been shunning some of that advice. The market's now good again. We should try and live debt free, but we probably shouldn't hoard cash. But what they haven't got rid of are a lot of these misconceptions about credit cards, right? I'm sure we all heard it growing up, most of us. If you're under 50, you probably heard the same things going back to even now. Teenagers now are still hearing the same stuff everyone under 50 heard. You shouldn't have credit cards. Credit cards are bad. They will put you in debt, and that's bad. Well, that's all bad advice. And that's coming from 70, 80 years ago, right? At the start of, the credit card era, coming out of stock market crash and depression and all that. Those are the common misconceptions. In reality, of course, you don't want to carry credit card debt. But most of the misconceptions around credit cards are just that, misconceptions. Opening credit cards, and listen to this, opening credit cards helps your credit score. It does not hurt your credit score. And it's a simple scientific formula that people don't understand. The basics of a credit score include the amount of open credit, and the more you have, the better, right? If banks only give you $1,000, that doesn't help you. People think, well, credit cards are bad. If they say you can borrow 20 grand, well, you might be a flight risk. Well, banks want to see other banks lending to you to see that you're not a risk, right? So as you open credit cards, number one, your credit limits go up, which is a good thing. Again, the more open credit you have, you look less of a risk. Also, the second piece people forget, the more open credit you have, any money you're spending on a monthly basis on your credit cards, it lowers the credit utilization. So, for example, if you have $1,000 credit card limit and you're spending, say, $800 a month of that, and then paying it off to avoid interest after the statement cuts, that's going to be reported to the credit bureaus as an 80% utilization each month on your card. $800 of the 1,000. That's going to hurt your credit score. And everyone can go fact check me, go look at a standard FICO scoring model. Credit utilization is a large percentage of your credit score, a very large portion. So when they see 80% utilization, that's a red flag. What's going on, right? Well, think about it. You have $1,000 limit. You're charging 800. You go get a new credit card. Guess what? You're now 5 years older. They give you a $5,000 limit. All of a sudden, the same spending each month is only 800 of 6,000 limit. It's no longer 80%. And I'm bad at math. It's a lot less than that. It's maybe less than 20%, less, about 15%, right? So opening one card, again, your overall credit limits are higher and your utilization is lower. Both of those factors are actually going to make your score skyrocket upwards, not tank downwards. The old misconceptions say opening a credit card will tank your score. It's just not based on science.
Yeah, that was so well articulated. Thank you. And I'm sure very, very helpful for people to hear. And I mean, when you think about it, if collectively a bunch of different credit card issuers are going to ultimately issue you, $50,000, 60, more, $100,000 in credit, it's because they trust you to handle it. And so yeah, that's definitely been our experience too. I'll just say, I thought my wife, who was the one that got us into this, I thought she was crazy. I had the same concerns you voiced before.
That's right.
And our credit's actually never been better. And it's opened up this whole new well of possibility for really enhancing and enriching our experience of life. So, all right. So if someone is, like most people, I would guess, listening to this, have a credit card, or they may even be earning some points, and then maybe they're just not sure what to do with them. What are would you say there are any like prerequisites to really being able to travel travel a fair amount of crew points that people need to have?
Yeah, a couple. Uh, First, it's the foundation of award travel. We call it our rule number one, and we stress it anytime we do a lot of live Zooms in our group.
Yeah.
We do a lot of one-on-one coaching, and we obviously pump out a lot of blog posts. It's rule number one, and it should be rule number one for everyone generally, but especially award travel. If you are unable to pay off your bills on a monthly basis, if you're carrying credit card debt, do not start playing this game. Award travel cards are not consumer friendly from an interest standpoint. Someone has to pay the benefits that these cards dish out. And one of the ways they do that is 20, 25, 30, 35% interest on these cards.
Yeah.
And this is, again, judgment free. But if you are carrying high interest credit card debt, do not open new cards and join this game. The best thing you could do, honestly, is open non-award travel cards that have 0% promo offers. Switch that high interest credit card debt to those 0% interest offers for 15, 18, 21 months and try and pay that down as quickly as you can. But rule number one is always, if you can't pay in full each month, do not start this game. If that is out of the way and your, as we call it, your financial house is in order, again, judgment free. We've all been there.
Yeah, sure.
But if your financial house is in order and you're ready for the next step, the biggest piece of advice I can tell you is you need to learn and understand transferable currencies. Points and miles, transferable points and miles. What do I mean by that? If you have a Marriott card, let's say, or a United Airlines card, those cards earn Marriott points or United Airlines points. If you want to take a trip this summer to Rome, and those are your two cards with your 2 points, guess what? You're flying United or its partners on United's pricing and staying in a Marriott hotel. That's your only options. Okay.
Right.
Instead, if you have, say, a Chase transferable card and say, an Amex transferable currency card, you're now stockpiling Chase Ultimate Rewards is what they're called, and then Amex membership rewards. Those are the two transferable currencies. Between those two sets of points, you can fly almost any airline in the world on dozens of different pricing charts. Again, the price of that gallon of gas, how many points you have to turn in. You now have dozens of options just instead of just United's pricing. And for hotels, similar story between Chase and Amex. Only two credit cards there. You have 6, 7, 8 hotel options with their pricing structure. So by changing your focus and learning transferable currencies over airline or hotel specific cards, you immediately open up new worlds and new possibilities for redeeming your points for maximum value.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And so basically most Amex cards, Amex Gold, unless it's specifically tied to a particular carrier, a particular hotel or something like that, most Amex cards are going to earn those transferable ultimate rewards, and most Chase cards, would you say?
That is true. Yeah. Amex is pretty good about telling you if it earns points or cash back. If Amex tells you it earns cash back, it is cash back. If Chase tells you it earns cash back, don't believe them. It may earn cash back. It may actually earn ultimate rewards that you could redeem as cash back instead of points. So Amex, yes, either Amex is going to earn either Amex membership rewards, cash back, or the co-branded airline or hotel points. Chase, you kind of have to do a deeper dive. It could be airline hotel points. It could be quote unquote cash back that's actually points, or it could be Chase Ultimate Rewards.
All right. And so what would you say is the biggest mistake that you see people that are dipping their toe in, or even people that are more experienced? I mean, as you said before, everybody has like kind of a different flavor, like their preferences. And some people can be a little snooty or judgy about it if they've been in the game a while.
Of
But
course.
what's the biggest mistake you say people make?
Yeah. So we have an article on our website that I share all the time. It's the top 10 mistakes for beginners. And we obviously cultivated this list because we see people making these mistakes every day. But more importantly, all the members of our team made multiple of these. And before we call it for beginners, mostly it's people that aren't in the game yet that have probably, they'll shake their head and be like, I'm doing that. I'm doing that. I'll go through a few of them quickly, and we don't have to expound on them a lot
Yeah,
because
sure.
we can get too deep there. But number one, don't use one card for everything. There is no single card out there that will get you the maximum return for your spend in every single category. There's just not. No, I'm not saying you have to go out and get 30 credit cards for everything, but you are not doing yourself a financial favor if you're using one credit card for all your spend. You are leaving money or points on the table in certain categories. That's a mistake. Second mistake, do not have shiny object syndrome. Hilton is great for this. Delta is great for this. And recently, Marriott is great for this. Hey, if you sign up for this card and spend $4,000 in 3 months, you get 150,000 points. Well, what does 150,000 points get you? You don't know. But they throw this shiny object at you. 150,000 points, that has to be a lot. Well, it might be one night at a hotel in Rome. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, this card over here that's only 60,000 points or 70,000 points could be a round trip business class flight that cost you $10,000. You don't know until you know, right? So we call it shiny object syndrome. Don't go out and get that splashy offer just because that's a mind-blowing amount of points. Well, so is, pick your currency, 10,000 Mexican pesos. It sounds a lot better than $5, but until you look at a currency conversion chart, you can't evaluate those two, right?
Right.
And again, points and miles are the same. They are not all created equal. A Chase Ultimate Reward, a Delta Sky Mile, a Marriott Bonvoy point, they aren't equal value. And unless you have that currency conversion chart, you just won't know.
So this is a great point you're making. And I think I remember when we first started doing this, my family, my wife, it started with, we had a particular trip that we wanted to take. And she started with that trip in mind. And then she worked backwards from that trip. And it sounds like what you're cautioning against is waiting to get the mailers in the mail, like probably most of us do, getting excited about the mailer instead of the thing that the mailer is going to get you potentially, or the bonus is going to get you, I should say. The points are going to get you. So is that a frame that you would encourage people to think about? Like start with what do you want? What are you after first?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
And again, it's a catch-22, chicken and the egg. Do you want people to get started somehow and get involved in the game and see how better their lives can become with free or close to free travel? Absolutely. So how do we bring them in? Maybe it's the way you're talking about. Optimally, however, it would be different. Optimally, people would join, follow a path of setting themselves up for success. We talk about this game is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You do not want to maximize longevity and long-term sound financial strategy. And I treat points and miles as a form of finance, as we discussed off air. We might get into that briefly in a minute, but you don't want to jeopardize long-term success for short-term value, right? I really want to stay at this specific hotel at this city for a trip in 6 months. That credit card may not make sense for that trip, even though it becomes free, right? That may be a bad move. Instead, consider what happens if, since the rest of the trip is free, we pay cash for that property. because it may not make sense. Maybe it does. And if it does, that's great. It can all be free, hopefully. But if it doesn't make sense, um, you really got to evaluate, was almost free better than completely free, if being completely free would jeopardize long-term success, right? So that's kind of chicken the egg. Can you get to that point of analysis when you're beginning? We hope so. And we try and teach people kind of the roadmap to success in mapping out your card strategy. A couple things I would say, again,
Mm-hmm.
no shiny card syndrome. If you receive a mailer, 99% of the time, that mailer has an offer in it that's available to the public. I'm sorry. I know when it arrives and says specifically for you, this offer, yeah, that's clever marketing. It's also available for your spouse, your neighbor, your neighbor's spouse, their 18-year-old child. It's available to everyone. You can probably go to that bank or airline or hotel's website, and guess what? It's plastered right there, the exact same offer. Unfortunately, they don't care about you. It's marketing, and it's great marketing, but don't let mailers dictate your credit card strategy. Come up with a roadmap. You can deviate from that roadmap when it makes sense, but don't let these companies tell you what to do. Really map out what you want and what you need, and only deviate from that if something new comes along that actually makes sense. Again, not shiny object syndrome, but something that actually makes sense. Well, this was going to be my fifth card, but guess what? They just doubled the bonus to the all-time high. I think I'll grab it as my second card. That may make sense. It typically doesn't make sense well, this was a card I was going to get, a couple years down the road when I finished this bank or that bank. But, they just added 10% more points, and I think I'm going to stay at that hotel next month. I'm getting the card. That's probably a bad long-term move. So I would caution against that.
So, okay. So let's just say somebody has, somebody listening to this has a United card, like you said, a, specific hotel card, a Southwest card, what have you, something that's pegged to a particular airline. What would you recommend is kind of the first move? Like, if I wanted to really set myself up for more possibilities, more options, is there if you had to start over, let's say, knowing what you know now, are there 3 or 5 kind of cards that you might look at either transferring to or starting with? And the second part of the question is, what should they do with the other cards they have? Should they close those cards or should they keep them?
Yeah, great questions. And again, we're kind of at the chicken and the egg, right? We hope people find us or similar award travelers to bounce ideas off of sooner rather than later. But how do you get there, right? First, I would say, hey, come join us, Travel on Point, start reading blogs, start reading our blog, learn more. I would caution against doing anything, including redeeming your miles, until you do some research. And maybe you've been doing some research. Maybe you've casually said, oh, United does this or Southwest does this, and I have this trip coming up. I would caution against opening new cards, closing cards, or redeeming your current points of miles until you learn a little bit more. You can probably change some things down the road that'll set you up for better success. So the first thing you can do once you learn a little more is you're going to hear us, you're going to hear all the award travel groups and blogs talk about, the first step to success is starting with transferable currencies. Don't earn United miles, don't earn Southwest miles. Start with those transferable cards. Perfect example, Chase. If you open a Chase Sapphire Preferred or Chase Sapphire Reserve, Chase Sapphire Preserve, lower annual fee, limited benefits. Chase Sapphire Reserve, higher annual fee, lots of benefits like lounge access, global entry, reimbursement, things like that. Those cards, the points they earn, can go to both United and Southwest. Why would you earn Southwest miles or United miles on 2 cards if you could earn the same amount of miles on 1 card, right? Pay 1 annual fee. Spoiler alert, the CSP and the CSR, Chase Sapphire Preferred, Chase Sapphire Reserve, in most categories of spending, earn more points than the Southwest or the United card. So if you want to earn Southwest miles while flying Southwest, you'll actually probably earn more Southwest points on a card that is not a Southwest card. I know it's mind blowing.
Yeah, and you get
it,
lounge access, right?
exactly.
On the way, right?
It's a different way of thinking. The airplane you're on, the hotel room you're in, their credit card may not be the best option for that program's points. And that's why I say there'll be an emphasis when you start on earning transferable currencies. For most folks, that is a Chase Sapphire Preferred or a Chase Sapphire Reserve, depending on your comfort level with annual fees and the perks you want with a card. But for 99% of folks, that's the starting point. Get in the transferable currency game and start earning those points that can go to Chase has 13 or 14 transfer partners.
So, all right, that's really helpful. Yeah. So, what are a couple secrets, couple like interesting, fun things that you've learned along the way that are, maybe a little bit more like, people might not expect, or people might not understand that you've learned as you've gotten deeper into it? Are there any cool like tidbits, misconceptions, or opportunities that you can share?
Yep. Probably misconceptions were the easiest one to share that people can relate to because we all heard it.
Sure.
Changing your clothing will not get you upgraded on an airplane. You can wear the nicest fedora guys and nicest 3-piece suit and walk on that plane like you own it and beg and beg and beg. They're probably not going to put you in business class. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. Another thing I will say, especially for airlines, you do not need status to get really nice seats for cheap, right? A lot of people think I need to fly this carrier from, people love AA in the DC area flying out of Reagan. I need AA status so I get all of my upgrades for free. Book business class. We flew recently down to Miami. It was like 14,000 points each way in business class. You can get right now. There's a AA card with 80,000 miles. I'm bad at math. That's more than 3 round trips in business class for one credit card. That one you can open like every 8 to 12 months. So, how many round trips do you need, right? To make a card worth it, and to realize you probably don't need status. Those are 2 big misconceptions. Again, on the credit card front, I would say, people really don't understand credit scores, and it's sort of sad to see because we've been told so many misconceptions throughout our lives. Opening cards doesn't affect your score. Obviously, paying timely does. But really, nothing else is going to hurt your score other than that. People worry about hard pulls when you have a hard pull on your credit to open. Yeah, exactly. They are a non-event. Okay. People say, I don't want to apply for this card. If I get denied, it's going to hurt me. And even if I get approved, it's going to hurt me for the hard pull. It's going to affect your score like 1 or 2 points for a month or 2. After that, no big deal. I don't know about you. Maybe your experience is different. I have never got a different mortgage rate or car loan rate because I had an 813 instead of an 815, right? It doesn't change a thing, but people focus on this minutia and they don't realize it's minutia, but it is. So again, that's another big misconception. I'm trying to think other.
I think one that might be helpful for people. Those are very helpful. And one thought I have is, I'll just tell you, like, just like you have already said, we have similarly many open credit cards, and what oftentimes I've heard people say, my wife, as you know, runs all of this for the most part, but people will say like, that sounds completely overwhelming. Like I could never keep track of all that. And I don't know about you, but for us, for the most part, there are several cards that we're using at any one time, right? So it's not nearly as complicated as it seems, but we do in fact have all these credit cards for the reasons you described, which is we just have a lot of, we have those cards, we can use them if we need them or if they're appropriate, but we also have the open credit with the banks. That is a really good signal for our credit. So is that your experience too? Like when people say this seems really overwhelming, what do you say to that?
Yeah, agreed. You can make this game as complex or as simple as you want to. You can, and we say all the time, you can take a free trip on one or two cards, even for a family. You know, you're probably going to be in economy, and you're not going to be at 5-star luxury hotels, more than likely. But you can take a completely free trip on one or two cards. That's not complicated, folks. Assuming you're using a debit card now and maybe one credit card occasionally, you're just flopping those two to two new ones. You're right. So you typically end up not spending on a ton of cards. It's, this doesn't have to take 10 hours a week of management. It's not overly complicated. And as you learn more and you travel more, you're probably going to want to open more cards. But you're also at that point going to be more familiar with having multiple cards, with using multiple cards, and the ins and outs of how to do that. You can set up automatic payments. You can change your closing dates to the same day of the month. So, hey, I now have 6 credit cards. The payments are all due on the 15th and they all close on the 17th or 18th. That makes it super simple, right? Little things like
Oh, I
that
didn't know
can
that.
really
I
make
didn't
it.
know that.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
interesting. You can change the closing dates.
Yep. Typically, after you've had a card for one billing cycle, you can call or chat the bank, and they will let you change the statement closing date to a date of your choosing. And put them all, if you want to, you can put them all on one date across all the banks, and then one day of the month your payments are all due, and then your statements will close on another, so you can check for fraud or any billing errors, anything like that, and then make sure you're good to go for the following month.
Nice. Well, I have a couple other questions if that's okay. But I before we do, I do want to just say that, I happen to have a wife who's into this, and I've talked to her a lot about your blog and about your Facebook group. And she, and I've just heard nothing but, and read, I mean, there's a lot of reviews about the work that you guys have done, that it's a very, very open and welcoming and safe and encouraging community. And that you're very responsive. And so I just want to put that out there, because for anyone listening, there's no cost whatsoever to join the group and to start to follow along, right? Anybody can join the Facebook group or start to follow the blog. Is that right?
That's right. We always joke that we hope everyone appreciates our free advice because
Right.
it's free.
Right. Right. And it's actually great. I was looking at the site earlier today. It's a beautiful site, and it just has a ton of information. So as you were saying before, I really hope everyone listening to this goes to check out the site travelonpoints.com, right?
Yep. Travel-on-points.com.
Thank you. Travel-on-points. And I'll put that in the show notes as well. But there's also, I would just say that there are credit card suggestions and reviews that are right there on the site. And so, for anybody thinking about, should I get a new card? Great place to go. Also, you can find the card that you actually want and just go right ahead and start the process if you decide. All right. So you said status. We can get around status. I do have one question though, because I know we've done this, and having status at hotels is really, really nice. And I don't exactly know how all this works, and I'd love for you to share, like, where do you think it's worth pursuing status? And as I understand it, hotels and different businesses will actually match the status of another business. So you actually sometimes you don't even have to do all the legwork. You can get your status matched from one to another. But what can you say about that? What suggestions would you give to people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do agree that, hotels are slightly different than airlines. Airlines, you can just book the class of service you want: first, business, economy, premium economy plus, whatever. If you don't want to, sit in the back of the bus in economy. That's not necessarily the case for hotels in all instances. So you are correct there. Status also gets you, depending on the brand, could get you free parking, waived resort fees that we all hate, free
Totally.
breakfast.
And parking in like New York City, where
exactly
it's
right.
$6 for a night. It's crazy.
It can be big. You're not going to get that those benefits without hotel status. So if there is status worth chasing, it's likely hotel status. Having said that, you can get top tier Hilton status through a credit card. So there's really no reason to go pursue that when you can just open a credit card and get top tier status, which is diamond. With Marriott, they just announced a new agreement with Amex, the top tier Amex Marriott Bonvoy card is the Brilliant. You now get second tier status with that. Bonvoy Platinum status, which is entitles you to upgrades, late checkout, and breakfast. So for those families out there that really enjoy the free hotel breakfast, even at luxury brands, that MX Bonvoy Brilliant card gets you that. Again, I'm not saying those are either of those cards, the Hilton card or the Bonvoy Brilliant are good plans. I'm just saying it's available. For most of us in the award travel world, what is worth pursuing is Hyatt status and Hyatt Globalist. Hyatt is by far, it's a niche hotel. It's one of the smallest chains in the world, but it is fabulous to its loyalists. When you have globalist status, among the perks I was mentioning earlier, globalists get free parking on award stays. So if you use points to stay, you get free parking. Again, as you mentioned in New York City, that can be $60 or $80 a night. It gets you free breakfast or free lounge access if they have a lounge to have free breakfast. If no lounge is available, you get to go sit in the restaurant and order anything off the menu you want. We've stayed at the Park Hyatt New York and done room service there. Once you get the sunrise, I forget what they call it, sunrise or New York sunrise. It's a New York strip with 2 eggs cooked anyway. By the time you get that for 2 people and coffee and juice, plus tip, you're in the 190, almost $200 range per day, and it's waived. That's unbelievable. You get suite upgrade awards. You get suite upgrades on arrival if they are available. It's easily the best status to have in the award travel world, and by far the best to have in the hotel game. So, and again, it's you don't have to be a credit card junkie to get this. You can just have the Hyatt card, or be a road warrior for work and go stay in Hyatts. 60 nights per year needed, either by staying at Hyatt's or spending on your Hyatt personal card or Hyatt business card. And once you get to 60 nights, you have Globalist for up to the next 2 years. So incredible loyalty.
It's amazing. It is amazing. I couldn't agree more. They treat you so well, and they really do appreciate their top status. So it's been wonderful for us as well. So, all right. Before we close here, you mentioned this before, but we're living right now. These are inflationary times. And I do think that people, I've heard this certainly a lot in our business, the Oxford Club, but like people are feeling very scarce and things are more expensive. And, sometimes what ends up getting cut out is travel or thoughts of travel or thoughts of, other things. But how do you think about this? What should we say about this as part of someone's thinking about their budget? Like, what impact can this actually have anytime, but particularly during a time like this, to not give up on, as we started the conversation, in something that can be so deeply enriching and fulfilling? How do you think about this as part of a balanced budget?
Yeah. So, I can wax poetic about points and miles. It's my passion. It's now a side business that's become basically full-time for our team of 5. I think points and miles cannot be valued enough in a financial sense. I treat it as a financial tool in my arsenal. It has changed our life, and it is life-changing for many people. For example, this year, Sarah and I, again, we are now fully engrossed in this game. We have been for 8 years, but we're going to be in the $150,000 range in free travel this year alone, 2022. And that's again not being fully up to speed post COVID. And again, people that are about to sign up for the first credit card or just got their first card or what have you, don't expect those returns immediately, but that's possible. But saying that to say that for anyone that starts this award travel game, it can replace a line item in your budget. Um, you know, even if you're traveling 90% off or 80% off or 70% off, what's your annual travel budget or what would you like it to be? And then slash that by 70 to 90% easily. It can become life changing, right? If you set aside $5,000 for the family trip, I'm telling you, you could take the same trip for, under $1,000. Well, what does that do for you? Do you start taking 5 trips instead of one? Do you set aside that in a 529 or in a savings account in an IRA? Start maxing your 401k? Do you do more home improvements at your house that are needed? What do you do? Well, for a lot of us in the word travel world, it just makes us, not only are we saving that money, but it makes us earn more points and miles through opening more credit cards to be able to do both. We're saving money, replacing that line item in our budget, and traveling more. And I think that's truly the life-changing aspect and kind of the double whammy there. You get the best of both worlds. You get to have your cake and eat it too. You see, I'm now traveling 90% off or more. Sometimes we take fully free trips, especially domestically. If we're paying $5.60 to fly and that's our only cost, that's a free trip in my mind, right? We're not going to sweat $11.20 per person to go round trip domestically. So in my mind, that's not 90% off. That's a free trip. So you can start to travel free and save that line item in your budget, but also you get to travel more because it's free or next to free. So you're saving money plus traveling more. That double combo there, that's available to anyone. You don't have to go out and sign up for dozens of credit cards a year. Again, you can take a fully free trip, family of 4, for 1 or 2 credit cards total. So once you see that potential and you're saving money plus traveling, it's going to make you go for more. I know. I'm speaking from experience.
Dude, I love your your energy is yeah, I do know. And I think it's maybe this is how we can kind of bring this thing home. It has been such a privilege and a treat, and I feel so grateful that we've found this, as it is actually expanded our interest, as you said, in travel. It's made us absolutely want to travel more, want to travel much, bigger and bolder than we thought possible before, stay in amazing hotels. We started to really look closely at these beautiful properties and think more about that. And I think you probably know this, but we took this amazing trip, my wife and I, for our 10-year anniversary to Bora Bora earlier this year. Yeah. We stayed in those bungalows that you see on pictures. We flew business class there. I mean, it would have been a very expensive trip, and we did it for like 5% of what it would have cost. I mean, could we have saved up and made that trip happen? I think we could have, right? We had been planning this trip for years. But to go and do that and have that life-changing experience, and to do it for so little, only means that during this time, we have that money we would have spent in our bank account, in our budget, or going against other things. And so it's been profound. So for you, I know that maybe the one last thing I wanted to touch here is getting involved in this travel community. I understand that you guys travel a lot with friends.
We do.
What kind of meaning or, richness has that aspect of your life brought? Because, it's, some people travel more than others, but I tell you, you get into this community and you're amongst fellow people who are interested in traveling. And a lot of times as I've observed, friendships form. And so anyway, what would you say?
I think it goes back to my last point. Honestly, it's life-changing. It's mind-blowing. It can't be understated, honestly. And until you've been there, you truly don't understand. I'll just give a small side story here about what can truly happen in this space. I met some buddies in the points of mile space at a meetup in 2019. One is now on the team. One is part-time on the team here at Top. But we met at a points of miles meetup to go dork out and talk about points of miles. And 3 years later, coming out of a pandemic, we have all these points and we say, hey, let's go do a guys trip. And they're both dads of young kids, toddlers, or pre-toddlers, I guess, still crawling around on the floor. And they say, let's just go have a guys trip. The wives will watch the kids and let's go. And I say, let's do it. So we flew business class over to France and did the ultimate guys trip. We toured the Normandy battlefields for 2 days. And there's plenty of women that would love to do that as well. But this was a guys trip, one of those guys trips where like our tour guide really dug deep. We said, we want to walk the battlefields. We want to hear all the stories. We want to live the lives of these guys, that fought and died. And it was mind blowing. Business class over, business class back. We stayed in a castle about 10 miles from the Normandy beaches. Just mind blowing. I couldn't have done any of that pre-points of miles. I didn't care about prices. It was free. I wouldn't have known these people without points and miles. This is truly what it's about, right? And it's how do you sum up this game, and how do you sum up the experiences of this game? You get to say yes. When someone says, hey, would you and Aaron like to go to, Phoenix, Arizona next weekend and stay at this luxury 5-star resort? Well, you're going to hop on, find some flights right fast, check the hotel. You got points. You can do it. Yeah, we're in. Don't care about the price. As long as you can find a sitter for the kids or take the kids with you, and there's flights available and hotels available, the answer is yes. And that's the beauty. You don't have to make those gut-wrenching decisions of, well, does this unexpected 3, 4, 5 grand go on a credit card, or do I have to tell my friends no? You just say yes, and guess what? It's free.
It's so true. All right, I'm going to ask you to tell that. You just made me think of one story that I know happened, and I got to ask you to tell it before we close, and then we'll wrap. Because it's such a great example, really, of, you are, I think, are such a great inspiration of what's possible here. So I know that you and Sarah, your wife, sold your previous home, I think, and or at least built the home that you now have through the pandemic. I can't imagine that all the beautiful travel you've done without spending all of the money that you would have spent didn't help with that at some level, or didn't at least make you feel better about it. But please share. But I also understand that you took a short trip overseas to Turkey to find something for your home. Can you just quickly tell that story as it relates to everything we've been talking about?
Yeah, it's a great story. And, it sounds braggadocious, and, but it's fun, right?
Please do.
And this is the kind of thing, again, able to say yes. My wife takes a nap one day, and I'm kind of bored, and it's a Sunday afternoon. I found 15 minutes of free time, so I'm word searching. Found nonstop flights to Istanbul. Probably one of my favorite cities in the world. From Dulles for very cheap. It's 45,000 miles each way, nonstop, over a weekend in March of this year. So I booked them while she was sleeping, told her about it. We stayed at the Park Hyatt. We flew over there to pick up 3 Turkish rugs for our new home. And again, mind-blowing story. I'm doing the math in my mind. Probably would have been cheaper to fly there and buy them versus buying similar rugs at a New York rug shop if we wanted to. But when it's free, it was a no-brainer. So we flew business class on Turkish over there and back, stayed at the Park Hyatt, and then a really nice Hilton Curio Collection property there in Istanbul. Went with one of our top teammates. We were over there for 4 days. I think we paid about $300 for the entire weekend, and bought some rugs, and they're now displayed in our home. And every single person that comes in our door hears this story. It's pretty cool.
Oh man, what a good way. That's a great place to end. Thank you so much. Before we close, where can people find out more? We said the site, let's say it again. So it's travel-on-points.com, right?
That is correct. Yeah. We're on Instagram, Travel on Points 1, the number 1. And then our Facebook group, you can just go on Facebook and search for Travel on Points, and a group should pop up. Hopefully by then it says we're 37,000 plus. Come join us. Again, friendly, safe space with hopefully quick and correct answers to all your questions.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Any parting thoughts? Any final words?
Hey, it's good to see you. Haven't got to see you and Aaron in person since pre-pandemic, so I'm looking forward to Corona being a thing of the past, and let's hang out and maybe fly somewhere and enjoy a luxury hotel together.
Let's do it. And I can't wait to see those rugs. All right. Thanks, Derrick.
It's a great story.
Take care. Thanks for checking out this video. Make sure you hit subscribe. I'm Nathan Hurd, also known as the Rich Life Guy. You can follow me at the Rich Life Guy. Also check out Rich Life Lab, which is the podcast available everywhere. And leave a comment and let me know if this video landed for you or what else you'd like to hear from me in the future. Thank you so much.